Mr. David Edwards has our prayer and pledge. Mr. Edwards.
Would you bow with me as we pray? Dear Lord, we thank you for this day and the many blessings and opportunities that have come to us. It's my prayer, Lord, that we have used each opportunity in a way that's pleasing and gives honor to you. As we preside tonight over the affairs of our community, I thank you for the fact that you give us the opportunity to live here and pray for your wisdom and your prudence as we make these decisions. Bless our men and women who are in harm's way, protecting the freedom of our nation. In Christ we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Play ball.
Good evening and welcome to the Murfreesboro City Council, February 25th, 2010. And as Council Member Edwards did such an excellent job tonight, he has asked me to take just a moment to wish his mother, Cleo Edwards, a happy birthday. So, Cleo, all of us on the council and everyone here in the room wishing we had birthday cake and candles and things here, know that you're having a good time and hope that you have a wonderful birthday today and many more after this one. And we certainly appreciate you for making Mr. Edwards the fine individual that he is, and allowing him to come out here tonight on your birthday and leave you alone, lonesome, all by yourself.
Meet the germ.
That took a bad left turn, didn't it?
Yeah, that didn't work out so well.
Wow.
All right, but we are pleased also to have with us with Youth Leadership Rutherford, Catherine Nash and Aaron Griffin, and with Leadership Rutherford, Ricky Knight. So we welcome our visitors and guests, and we certainly are proud of you for participating in both of these fine programs, and we look forward to seeing you out in leadership positions in our community, and thank you for doing that. On your consent agenda, the annual concrete and storm drainage contract extension, which is recommended in the consent agenda by the Street and Sign Department, has been moved to the regular agenda. But other than that, council members, that's the only that's the only change that we have. So if you have had an opportunity to look at the consent agenda, are there any questions regarding it? If there are no questions, is there a motion that we accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion is second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. You also have before you the minutes of our meetings held on January the 14th, a regular meeting, January 21st, a regular meeting, January 28th, a regular meeting, and February 11th, a regular meeting. If you've had an opportunity to look at those minutes, are there any corrections, additions, or deletions?
Bless you. Mayor, I move we approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
All right, you have a motion second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. This time we'll consider for passage on second reading an ordinance to amend Appendix A zoning, Sections 2, 9, 24, and Charts 1 and 4 dealing with postmortem establishments.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. At this time we'll consider for passage on second reading an ordinance to rezone an area located along Medical Center Parkway to Commercial Fringe CF District.
Move for its passage. Second.
A motion and second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. At this time we'll consider for passage on second reading an ordinance to rezone an area located along Lascassas Pike and Windlawn Drive to a local commercial CL district.
Move for its passage.
Second.
Motion and second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington. Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. This time we'll consider for adoption a resolution expressing the official intent that certain expenditures for storm drainage improvements along Leaf Avenue and Hazelwood Drive be reimbursed from proceeds of notes, bonds, or other indebtedness to be issued or incurred by the city.
Mayor Bragg, I know we took one item from the consent agenda and moved it down to the regular agenda. And if I could, I might spend a few minutes explaining the process we use to procure the services of Rollins Excavation, because it really ties into the refunding resolution as well. These two items are related, so if you bear with me, I'll give you just a brief bit of background about how we came to the point that we're at. For many years, the city has had an annual concrete and drainage contract as well as a paving contract. There are projects that come up throughout a budget year that come up unforeseen, and they'll need to be addressed. There may be projects that need to be completed that are beyond what our city crews can do, either from a time standpoint or a skill standpoint. So we want to have a process in place that we can engage a firm to complete those, but still comply with the state law relative to purchasing. So we have routinely issued bid specifications. We've put a copy in your dais there before you. They're quite large, and it goes into great detail about things that might need to happen from a drainage or concrete work standpoint. So the process that we use to procure those services is the same one we use for all of our city projects that are bid out. This set of bid specifications includes contractor requirements about licensure, bonding. It includes the same process that we use about advertisement in a newspaper, the fact that bids need to be sealed and submitted to the city manager's office, the fact that the bids are opened publicly, read aloud, and then all of that is reviewed by the city's legal department before we would bring it to you for a recommendation, ultimately, that you would then award a contract. At the time Rollins was selected, when this was done in 2008 and 2009, Rollins was established to be the low price for this contract. So because they have been very successful in work that they have done for the city, they've got a great deal of detail and have worked well with our residents in terms of getting their yards put back the way they were supposed to. That was the reason why we brought to you the Leaf Avenue contract to you using the Rollins contract. This process is used by many communities in Tennessee. We know there's work that needs to occur. We want to make sure that we follow the law about how services are procured, and that's exactly why we did this the way we've always done it, why many other communities in Tennessee will do the same thing. So when we brought to you the recommendation to use Rollins for Leaf Avenue, it was done using the same contractor requirements as we always require. It was done using the same public bid process that we always use. And the prices that were established in that contract were the low bid at the time that contract was awarded. So we feel like we've given a full public process to this. The prices were established competitively, and we've got a contractor who has worked very well for the city. We awarded this contract in June of 2008. They did a good job. In 2009, we recommended that you renew this contract. This contract's got a provision for 3 years, a 1-year term, and you can mutually agree to extend it 2 years. So we did that last year. They've done a good job again for us this year. And that was the item that we had on the consent agenda, and we still recommend your approval of Rollins to perform the annual concrete and drainage contract for this year. This is the last year we can automatically extend that. Next spring, we will have to rebid this, and we will do so. But they've done great work for the city. That work certainly gave us the confidence that they ought to do the Leaf Avenue project. And I'd be happy to answer questions on the annual contract if you've got any.
All right, in consideration of renewal of this annual concrete storm drainage contract extension, is there an escalator clause each year for additional pricing?
I don't believe so. I think the prices are listed in the document that you have before you.
And so when we renew, then we're renewing essentially or at the same price level?
We are. It's and that's why it's a mutual agreement between the city and the contractor. Obviously, if as we experienced several years ago, if prices start escalating substantially, then the contractor may want to opt out, and then vice versa, the city may want to opt out. But it's something that's mutually it's a mutual agreement on both parties.
Mr. Gilly?
So with that understanding in mind, Mr. Griffin, that means that we're getting 2010 work done at 2008 prices.
That's correct.
It was the low bid in 2008, and 2.5 years later now, we're still getting advantage of those prices.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Vice Mayor?
Go ahead. To make sure everybody understands what we're doing, when you say bid, they bid out unit prices on certain items, and then whatever the job comes out to be, that's what it is. So there's an estimate on your behalf, Mr. Griffith, that you can kind of give us a range or a ballpark figure on what a project will cost, but that is not a set number. That number comes in after the quantity of work done, because it's really an unknown how much work is going to be done, how much material is going to be needed or taken out or added or whatever. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes, that's exactly correct, Vice Mayor Bratcher. The quantities are, we estimate the quantities on the front end, but obviously whenever, really not only in this contract, but also our capital improvement projects that are bid out also, they're very much similar, and it states very plainly in the contract that those are just estimated quantities, and that's the reason why the city has chosen to go with a unit bid price as opposed to going with a lump sum amount. The work that is paid for is what is actually performed, and it's not, and it's fair for both the contractor and for the city.
I know we just, and I guess we rely on your expertise because you are a city engineer. We just recently bid out the extension of, I think, Medical Center Parkway, and that came in substantially under bid. What is your opinion on if this was bid out? Do you think we're in line, or do you think we're exposed to save some more money if we bid it out? How did you come up with how you come up with?
It's really this contract is a little more specialized in the fact that you're dealing with significantly. It could be lower quantities, less quantities, and it's also it could be moved around sporadically around town. You're not looking at something where you're grading 2 miles of roadway. You know what the job is. You're starting in one point and going to the other one. This is more in the line of, it may be 300 feet of sidewalk here, 500 feet of sidewalk in another place. So there's not necessarily, I understand what you're saying, but there's not a correlation, whereas you may expect some savings on the bid price, but you're looking at numbers that were 2 years old versus even just what the normal cost of the difference in the fuel or difference in the new equipment might be. There's not a direct correlation to our bid projects our roadway project, capital improvement projects, as to what we're doing with these type of and to be honest with you, you really have to find a specialized contractor that's willing to go in and go into people's backyards and to take down fences, to do these drainage projects and to restore it. And it almost gets to the you have to deal with each individual homeowner on an individual basis and see what their needs are. It may be something as simple as, hey, whenever you start to work, will you put my dog in the back door type of thing. It's really a more localized contract to what we deal with on these capital improvement. And that's the reason why we're so particular about who we let work in these neighborhoods and work especially in these established neighborhoods, and they understand that hey, this is these people's homes, and they need we need to make sure we make every effort to be as hospitable to them as we can.
And if I might add, Mr. Bratcher, one of the other elements that's a cost component of this project is the fact that because we were using this already established contract, we did not need to develop a set of bid specifications and contract documents that would be paid for by a civil engineer that the city would have to write a check for. So there was a cost savings accrued there. So it's kind of hard to put them side by side, apples to apples, but we feel like the price was very competitive. And as Mr. Griffith mentioned, this contractor is going to be able to handle a situation in a mature neighborhood where we're working in backyards to make sure that the residents stay happy.
I agree, and that was probably one of the questions I was going to ask. There is a cost if we go the other route. If we went the bid route system, there is a substantial cost to the city of Murfreesboro having to put together specific documents that would outline and dictate what the contractors would do on each site, and each site being different. It would be one, be difficult to do. Two, it would be pretty costly to do that. I would assume that.
It would, and I met in my prior employment when I was managed construction for the city of Nashville. We had a very similar system that was set up to this, and very similar type contractor that had the contract, and it was really just it was more of a specialized work that a lot of the road builders, a lot of the larger contracts, or a lot of larger contractors just aren't willing to take on, or if they are, they up their prices so much that it prices them out of the
Okay,
contract.
I got one more. Then I'll let someone else ask the question, if you would. I know we can't lose the fact that their whole intent of this project was to help those homeowners in that area who have been experiencing some flooding and some drainage problems. So it's been experiencing those for years.
Yes, sir.
Now, given where we are in this contract process, if we decided to go to another direction, bid direction or whatever, it would probably postpone this project for a length of time. Given where we are in February, going forward at this point, if we postponed it, go into the rainy season, dry, whatever, what is your thoughts on that scenario?
And that's a good point, Vice Mayor Bratcher. It would push us. My estimate, you would be looking at least 4 to 6 months before you were able to produce a good set of documents that you could bid the project on. Right now, the work that we're starting initially is pipe work that's more conducive to the winter. We're able to get that completed, and then our goal is for that to lead in directly into the concrete ditch work. Obviously, there's only the condition of some of these backyards and neighborhoods, or some of these backyards and ditches. There's probably about a 2 to 3 month period, starting in, I'd say, July, August, September, that you're able to work in these yards. So it would take quite a bit of revamping of our current schedule in order to really to get it done this year.
Okay. Mr. McFarland.
And not to, I don't disagree with Vice Mayor Bratcher, but this project has been bidded because this is through a bidded document already. So I guess one question I'm asking, it's not like we just picked a number out of the air and said this is what we're going to pay and this is the contractor we're going to pick because this is who we like. They went through the city specifications, went through the bid process, bidded the units. We did a closed bid. We opened those bids, and they were the low bidder on the project. So, I mean, it is a bidded project, right?
Yes, sir.
The other thing is, I was just out in Leaf Avenue on Tuesday walking a lady's property, and, how many meetings have we had out in this area with not counting the ones where we've asked you guys to come out and we've walked the neighborhood and we've met with different homeowners in their living rooms out there and we've seen firsthand the problems that they're experiencing. But how many organized meetings through the city have we had?
I know I've held 2 advertised meetings just during the recent development of the improvements. We did one at the beginning of the project to get everyone's input, to get where we felt like we had a good understanding of where the problems were. We wanted to make sure that we addressed each homeowner and what their need was. And then we developed a set of plans, I say a set of plans. We developed a design, basically a schematic of what we were going to do as far as where we would pipe it, where we would do concrete ditches that would best affect. And basically our goal was to get the backbone of a good drainage facility in. Once that was completed, went back to the neighbors and had another meeting in the neighborhood there at a local church, and got some more feedback from them. And matter of fact, made some, what I think was some very good changes to the project. I appreciate our consultant, SEC, who did the original layout of it. There were some concerns that was very real concerns that we went back and made some modifications to. So I really think this was a really very good example of our consultant listening to the people that it was going to affect and making the changes accordingly.
Because we also were presented with a petition from the
Yes.
community, the neighbors in that community who petitioned the council and the city staff to do something in that area. So, I mean, if you had to categorize, or if I did, I would say community involvement's been pretty high out in that area as far as being organized and really wanting something to be done in that neighborhood.
And that's one of the reasons why it was really such a fulfilling project to me personally, was because it did have so much community involvement, not like you said, the petition all the way from the beginning, and even before the petition was ever, I was meeting out there. My predecessor, Ken Hayes, had met with them on site. It was really something that I thought was where I still think is an advantage to everyone that's been involved, and really something I think is shown to be a worthwhile project. And I think in September or so, when we're finished with it, I think everybody will be pleased with it. You did mention one thing about that I wanted to address about it, and I failed to mention before. It is a unit rate contract. We have inspectors on the job daily that's measuring the amount of equipment that's been, or the equipment that's being used, the amount of pipe that's being laid. They'll measure how much concrete ditch is going in. So these are things that are going to be very well documented, just the way we would do any other project, any capital improvement or road project. So we're handling it. Your point's well taken, exactly the way we would a road project, and went through the same contractual process leading up to it.
And when we look at the project, as late as this past Tuesday, where we really haven't had, what I would consider, we had a great weekend that we didn't really have any rain, we still had significant amounts of standing water that were in that area out there.
Yeah.
So although you could probably classify this as a non-emergency, I mean, my thought is if you have to drive over water to go through your driveway, then that would be an emergency to me. So we still feel like it's.
Yeah, it doesn't. In the time that I've spent looking at it, it doesn't go down its own this time of the year. And I was out there just checking on the progress myself of the contractor, and I noticed standing water all over the place. So I think it's a very worthwhile 50-year-old neighborhood that Mr. Templeton has done his best to try to hold together, but it's really just gotten to a point to where we needed some specialized work that our forces really don't have the ability to complete.
Did we not undertake about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago a kind of an overall study of the city and the drainage areas to try to prioritize them?
We have, yes. To answer your question, yes. I believe it was at the council workshop that we had Barfield Crescent. We presented to you several projects that were really priorities to us, and we had done it through just institutional knowledge, and we'd also done it through, we'd started a, I guess for lack of a better term, a complaint system where we'd have, we're able to keep a database and log these areas, and we, based off of that, we were able to prioritize our drainage needs. I'm happy to report that several of them we've addressed in conjunction with some nearby projects, but this is one that's still we're just now been able to get to.
And isn't the Manny Avenue project that we're working on still identified as a drainage issue? So we've got Leaf Avenue, we have Manny Avenue.
Yes, sir.
There are obviously two different sides or sizes of projects that's coming through. And if I'm not mistaken, when we did, not 6 weeks ago, or a change order at Florence Road, we almost had a change order for nearly this same amount of money because we had a contractor who had a lot of difficulties dealing in people's yards and front yards and trying to get all their everything hooked back up again once we did that paving project.
And I'm still battling with those same difficulties here a couple of months later. It's just a it's a whenever you have someone that can do the work and excels at it, and Rollins certainly isn't the only one. There's others out there, but it certainly makes our job a lot easier.
Well, I realize there's been questions raised, and I raised the question myself, but last week when we looked at trying to determine, or the week before last, when we tried to look at whether we were interested in bidding this or whether we're letting them do it, and it just sticks in my mind that you've got somebody who's prepared to go to work right away. And I understand there's always a question. I mean, you could bid it or not. You might bid it and have somebody that bids $1.4 million. You might bid it and have somebody that does it for $650,000. So frankly, I'm satisfied that we have done our due diligence. I respectfully understand anybody that disagrees with us, but I frankly feel like we've got the right people on the job to do the job at the time. Council, you obviously have a choice to decide whether you want to do something different. But
Yeah.
Vice Mayor, you may have a comment.
Well, I just do, and I agree with you, Mayor. I think that, we've done, these people have been awarded the stormwater contract based on their low bid. It's not like Mr. McFarland said, we just didn't choose this contractor out of midair and throw a price out there. It's been scrutinized, and it will continue to be scrutinized as we go forward. One thing about these old communities that you mentioned earlier, Mr. Griffith, you have a 50-year-old community, and back then there wasn't a lot of detail to stormwater drainage, but no. I think today we have stormwater drainage maintenance contracts that we require developers and people to install. But back then, you have a lot of silt coming in from whatever drainage. You have fences that's been installed and trees planted and buildings built in drainage where there should be drainage. So it's something that some of our older neighborhoods are continually are going to need to be readdressed as we go forward. And I'm satisfied that with this bid process, and I'm satisfied with this contractor could do a good job. Now, one question I would have, not to you, Mr. Griffith, but I think would be to Mr. Lyons or to legal. I've had a couple of calls, and Mr. Lyons, I've called you in the past on this. And, one of the observations that a citizen had made was they had questioned me about was this contractor, was they using workers who were legal Americans. And I had called Mr. Lyons one other time, and he had looked into that. And I just want to make sure that whatever policies that we have in place, that we want to make sure that we are, first of all, working legal Americans, whatever their nationality is, and two, if we can work local people, that would be even better, that we can keep our jobs here in Murfreesboro. And I'll let you comment on that if you would. So
our contractors all need to follow the law. Employment law and otherwise, and obviously there's federal and state law dealing with employment. So we expect all our contractors to do that. Any of the federally funded projects, there's actually a formal process that you have to go through, and so there's been city projects where that that documentation has to be checked. So yes, sir, if there are, individuals, if the citizen believes there's an issue there, if they can provide some evidence, it'll be certainly looked into.
Which I might add, Vice Mayor Bratcher, that this contractor is in the process of completing the Spring Street reconstruction, which was a bid project, but it was also a federally funded project. So they've had to go through all of the requirements for a federally funded project.
And Mayor, I just want to, we tell this through email or we'll talk on the phone, but publicly just say how good of a job Mr. Griffith has done on dealing with this project. That, I probably between the 7 of us, we're all calling him to set up meetings and go walk and talk with the same property owners and walk the area, in muddy boots and walking through people's backyards. And anytime that you call Mr. Griffith or send him an email, he's the first one to call that resident, set up the meeting, and go out there. So, publicly, just want to say thank you for helping us keep the community as involved as they have been, not only here but in other areas of town, Manny Avenue, all those areas that we've continuing to look at. So, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. His department, along with the other State Lots department, anytime there's a neighborhood meeting, of course, that's off hours and on off, if you would, work time, and they all do a good job. So I agree with Mr. McFarland.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so you have before you actually from our consent agenda to consider recommendations of the Street and Sign Department Director to renew the annual concrete and storm drainage contract extension with Rollins. And so let me ask the council if there are any questions either from Mr. Templeton, who is here, from Director of our Street Department, or from Mr. Griffith regarding the renewal of this annual concrete and storm drainage contract. Are there any questions?
We just hope we don't use any more salt.
No more salt. That's right. We don't need any more salt, I hope. All right, then is there a motion that we accept this recommendation of the Street and Sign Department to renew this annual concrete and storm drainage contract with Rollins?
Move for approval.
All right, you have several.
Second.
Just give it
No motion, 2
2
seconds. That'll work.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions regarding this renewal? Seeing none, would you please call the roll, Ms. Wright?
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. Now you have the resolution before you to be adopted expressing the official intent that certain expenditures for storm drainage improvements along Leaf Avenue and Hazelwood Drive be reimbursed from proceeds of notes, bonds, or other indebtedness to be issued or incurred by the city of Murfreesboro. Is there a motion that we adopt this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
All right, you have a motion and a second. Are there any questions on the adoption motion? If not, please call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. Mr. Griffith, thank you. Mr. Templeton, thank you for being here. And Mr. Griffith, don't stray too far, because I'm going to ask you at the tail of the agenda to speak to us about your neighborhood meeting regarding the Manny Avenue project and what will be entailed, and try to give people some information regarding that meeting, which I believe will be March the 16th. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's
Okay,
correct.
thank you. So I may call you back up, so don't stray too far.
I'll be here. Thank you. And I'm sorry, I believe the drainage contract was covered, but did you, I didn't catch it. City, or the paving also? Okay, thank you.
All right, this time we'll consider any beer permit applications. Ms. Wright.
Mayor, we have several tonight. We have one at 304B West Thompson Lane that is an ownership change for a concession stand restaurant combination. We have an ownership change for a restaurant at 1835 Old Fort Parkway. We have a ownership change for a pub at 903 Gunnerson Avenue. We have a ownership change for a restaurant at 2805 Old Fort Parkway, Suite N and O. We have a new location at 211 West Main Street for a dance club with a restaurant. We have a new restaurant coming at 801 Northwest Broad Street. It's only an ownership change for that location. They are almost through with codes and would like to have this issued as soon as they finish codes. And we have some special event for networking events for the Chamber of Commerce, and there's various locations for those. All of these have met our requirements with the exception of the restaurant at 801 Northwest Broad Street, lacking a final building code inspection.
All right.
I
You have
apologize.
all of these which have met the requirements. Is there a motion that we accept these fair payment applications? Thank you. I have a motion second. Please call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
If anyone has
Aye.
a sippy cup out in the audience, that'd be nice, too.
Drainage problems.
Yeah, we have drainage problems.
Up here.
Mr. Griffin, need to look at these.
I'm good. It's okay.
If I could have your attention, please. You have before you a revised list of the statements to be considered for payment. Are there any questions regarding the bills to be paid? If not, is there a motion to pay the bills?
May we pay the statements?
Second.
Motion and second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. I would like to recommend to you that we reappoint to the Airport Commission Mr. Steve Lane and Mr. John Polk, and to the Board of Gas Examiners, Ms. Brenda Sharp.
So moved.
Second.
All right, you have a motion and second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington. Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. Mr. Adelot, I might ask you if you would come to the podium, please, and speak to the March 9th meeting that the Planning Department is asking the public to attend regarding the medical zoning around our existing Middle Tennessee Medical Center, and tell us about that meeting, which will be 4 to 6 p.m. at the Patterson Park Community Center.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for asking me to come up and talk about this. This is going to be one of our, I guess, interesting projects over the course of this spring and into the early summer. What we are having is a situation with the hospital is expecting to have substantial completion on their new hospital facility on June 15th, with their occupancy, with their patient move to be October the 2nd. So we're going to be seeing a movement of the hospital. With that, we've been having a lot of concern by property owners in the area about what is going to happen with the inventory of medical offices in the area. So with that concern being repeatedly vocalized to the planning staff, we thought it was time that we'd be a little proactive and find out how we're going to address this. So how we're going to do it is, first we're going to ask the public how they think we ought to do it. So we're having a neighborhood meeting on March the 9th from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock p.m. at the Patterson Community Center. We've posted signs in the area. We are getting some good press in the newspapers and on TV, on our cable channel. I'm going to appear on WGNS, and we're announcing at tonight's meeting. We're going to announce it at the Planning Commission meetings. So we're looking to get people's interest. We hope that you all are talking to your constituents. What we want to do first is to educate the public on what the zones consist of, what the zone ordinance provides, and then begin to get people talking about it and interested in it. This will not be a public hearing where we're going to ask people to come up and vocalize their opposition or support yet. What we're wanting to do is to get people to give us their thoughts about what kind of changes should be made, if any. So we want people to come out. Again, that will be on March 9th from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock at the Patterson Community Center, Meeting Room A. and we invite you to send us your comments. We've also set up a website, so if you get to the city's website at www.murfreesborotn.gov, there's a link right to it with some questions that we've put out there that you may want to answer, but you're welcome to provide your own comments and disregard our questions. So we're looking for ways to get people involved.
Thank you.
And I'll probably make a similar announcement next week if you'll give me that opportunity.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Daylight, regarding that. And Mr. Griffith, if you would, please come and talk to us about the March 16th meeting from 6 to 8 p.m. at Patterson regarding the Manny Avenue infrastructure upgrade.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are having a public meeting, as you mentioned, March 16th from 6 to 8 p.m. Mr. Lanny Goodwin's been good enough to open his facility up to us. It'll be, as you mentioned, the Manny Avenue improvements. This will be phase one of the Manny Avenue improvements, which will extend from College Street to all the way to Broad. This first section deals primarily with drainage, but it will also include streetscape improvements. We've got some new and exciting technology that we have planned for the area, and we want to get everyone's feedback, get everyone's ideals on it. We're just about finished with the preliminary design, and before we go any further, we'd like to get a chance to show it to everyone and to get their thoughts and see how we can implement their ideals into the to the plan. We are sending out notices to everyone that's along Manny Avenue and up to the residents and to if the property owner is different. And of course, we'll be sending notices out to interested interested groups such as the Main Street, obviously the City Council, the Planning Commission, and Historic Zoning Commission will be invited also. But we just as we had a lot of good feedback and a lot of good input on this Leaf Avenue project, we really encourage everyone to come out so we can get your ideas and we can get those included in the plans.
All right. Thank you very much for that update, and we'll try to make sure we get good attendance at both of those meetings. They're both very interesting projects and certainly critical to our established traditional neighborhoods, and I hope a number of people will come out and share with us their concerns and their interest in what they feel like would be a good way to go about these two projects. All right, is any other business to come before the staff or the council from the council or from staff at this time? Anything else? All right, Ms. Edwards, remember, happy birthday. You're adjourned.